welcome to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, Executive Director of the Community Career Center, a resource center located in Naperville for people in career transition. If you are unemployed, underemployed, or seeking a career change, this show is for you. Career Center will bring human resource professionals and other experts together to provide job search tips to assist you as you search for your next success. Later on Career Center, we will talk with image consultant Charmaine Smith on how to dress for success. But first, it is my pleasure to introduce Sally Hines. Sally spent the majority of her career in the human resource field. Sally, welcome.
Thank you. Nice
Sally, I know a lot about you, but I want you to share some information about yourself to our audience.
I started out in sales, actually in advertising sales, newspaper advertising sales, and determined that I really wanted to be in human resources, so I ended up going back to school and getting a degree, and I spent over 25 years working in different areas in human resources, from recruiting to performance development, and spent some time in compensation and cycled through a number of different jobs, and I am currently retired.
Yeah. So, as you were in the HR field, how have you seen the field change over the years since you've?
Well, it's changed considerably, certainly since the time that I began. I mean, the whole business of finding a job has changed so completely. I mean, back when I started, people looked up in the Sunday Tribune and, sent their resumes to an ad, got a phone call, went in for an interview.
Yeah.
It was very simple. The internet wasn't around. We didn't have any of that. So, and it was during the period that I was working that everything changed monumentally. First of all, the internet meant that you were getting, instead of maybe 50 to 100 resumes, you'd get 500, 600, 800 resumes for a job. So it made the screening process incredibly more complicated. There was the advent of software that analyzed resumes. So there was the business of scanning all the resumes and then using keywords to pull them up when you were looking for a candidate. So that certainly changed it considerably. And at the same time, we went through several different economic situations that caused real issues around employment.
So I want to touch today on, I'm sure, something that you as a volunteer at the center has experienced in talking to our clients, and that is ageism, or the seasoned job seeker and landing their next success. Clearly, people are landing.
Yes,
over
absolutely.
50. So there's things that they're doing right, and we'll touch on that, and just some tips on what are some things that maybe people need to do to make sure that they are prepared as they go in for an interview.
Well, one of the things that occurs to me about the whole issue of ageism is that often I think it's the characteristics that we associate with older people that are an issue for some folks. So I think that dispelling some of those biases when you're in an interview process is really critical. And what I mean by that is that often people are afraid that if you're of a certain age, you're going to be inflexible, or you're going to be difficult, or you're going to assume that you sort of know it all, and you're going to have difficulty getting along with younger workers. So there are a lot of sort of biases out there that I think as an applicant or as a candidate you have to dispel by the kinds of sort of examples you use when you're talking about work that you've done, coming up with examples that give you an opportunity to show that you're very flexible, that somebody has perhaps changed a deadline on you and shortened the time you have to do something, and you were able to jump in and find a way to get it done, or you suddenly got a change of direction from new management and you were able to accept that and continue. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do with the things that you bring up during the course of an interview to dispel things they haven't even asked about that may be standing in your way.
So it sounds like you really need to be, you really prepare for the interview.
You absolutely have to be prepared.
Prepare those questions.
Absolutely. And I always tell people that I think they should think about 3 accomplishments that they're particularly proud of, things that they did that they want to find a way to get across to the person they're interviewing with. And those examples can often fit a number of different kinds of questions, but you have to be prepared to come up with something when they use behavioral questions and say, tell me about a time when, you know, always,
be ready.
Yeah, the dreaded.
Yes.
So having those kind of in the back of your mind is really important. Being really familiar with the job posting and knowing exactly what they're looking for and having done a little bit of research, possibly. If there's any question at all that you may not be really current on some of those things that you see mentioned in the job posting, you may need to do a little bit of research and talk to some people ahead of time. Even perhaps using LinkedIn to contact people and get some more information about things that you're feeling.
Absolutely. When we talk about interviews, I know, and we've talked about this before, the seasoned worker may be interviewing with someone who is significantly younger than them.
Yes.
How do you prepare for that?
Well, I once had a client come in and say, I had an interview yesterday and I swear I interviewed with my grandson. So it's not even sons these days. Sometimes, sometimes the interviewer is considerably younger. And I think you have to be very conscious of the fact that you don't treat them in any way as though they're younger or as though they're your son or grandson. And sometimes unconsciously we do things like that. So that you have to make a conscious effort to overcome that, you know, tendency. And I think you have to recognize that younger people these days have huge qualifications and often have extensive backgrounds way beyond their years. And so you have to be willing to just sort of step back and take age out of your mind as well as you're asking the interviewer not to think about your age.
Right. I mean, and when they're interviewing with you, you want to make sure that they know, that they recognize the fact that you're current.
Absolutely.
You have that, you know, a current, you know, email address or your skills are up to date.
Right. And yes, absolutely. And that you know what are the really current issues in the field, that you're familiar with all the new trends and that you haven't been hiding in a corner for the last 10 years, because that's also a great fear. Yeah.
What are some, and then we talked a little bit about the biases, but the stereotypes that people shouldn't buy into as they...
Well, I think it's important that we who are seniors or who are, you know, over a certain age and are looking for work need to recognize that we have our own biases and we have to be careful of those when we're dealing with people in a workplace, as well as the reverse. I also think that people tend to be afraid that we're not going to have the same amount of energy, we're not going to have the same amount of drive. And so we have to go out of our way to show that that's not the case. And it really isn't the case. I mean, times have changed. And people who are 16 these days...
it's the new 40.
Yeah, it's the new 40.
It's the new 40.
So we just have to convey that to people and let them see our energy. And sometimes energy is even shown by the way you sit and the way you talk and the level of your tone of voice. And so I always recommend practice interviews. So that, and if possible, videotape them, because you'd be surprised how different you may look. And that can help you make those kind of corrections that convey a whole different sense of who you are.
Right. And, you know, also I think, and I'd love for you to just, you know, expound on this a little bit, but really focusing on your experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, you bring that wisdom and experience to the table that, you know, the younger counterpart may not have.
Yes, there's plenty of opportunities for you to relate to things that they bring up by talking about things that you've done. And absolutely that's important, so that they know that you may fill a gap that they have that they don't even realize they have. Absolutely.
What about salary expectations? What are your thoughts on?
Oh, salary is such a tough issue these days. It's really a difficult thing, and I think it's very hard many times for people to accept the fact that sometimes when you're starting over, you're going to have to accept a lower salary than what you had in your last position. And so you have to sort of come across as flexible. I generally tell people to try to turn the salary question around if they can. So if somebody says, what are you expecting? You say, well, can you tell me what the salary range is? And then you can sort of fit yourself in the range, or you can kind of, put the ball in their court. But I do think you have to be flexible often when you're moving to a new position.
And your advice on how to stand out in a job search, just for anyone in general. How do you make yourself stand out?
Well, certainly your resume has to be the first thing that attracts people's attention, because they get so many resumes these days, and it's always a winnowing down process. So focusing on results and accomplishments instead of writing what looks like a job description makes all the difference in the world. And the top third of your resume is the deciding area.
Yeah, absolutely.
That depends on whether they read through the resume. So you have to put the powerful statements up toward the top. You also have to pay attention to the order of the bullets, because nobody reads all the way through them anymore.
Absolutely.
The priorities, the high priority ones have to be toward the top. So your resume is critically important. And it's networking. I mean, everybody will tell you it's networking. And
absolutely, no matter what.
You have to reach back to people you've worked with, in past careers. You have to talk to your neighbors and, everybody that you can possibly connect with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Timeless traits. Just we wrap up here.
I think timeless traits, I think high energy is certainly one of them. I think exhibiting a willingness to take on any kind of project, to be flexible, to be open to new things, to look as though you're a continuous learner, as though you always want to learn new aspects. I think those are all important.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sally.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I want to thank Sally for sharing her thoughts and advice on how to successfully navigate ageism and the job search with our audience. The takeaway here is to stay current, right?
Absolutely.
Up next, image consultant Charmaine Smith will be right back after this public service announcement.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Good things happen at the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. Experience more than 25,000 acres where native plants and animals make their home. Discover the scenic beauty of over 60 forest preserves containing forests, prairies, and wetlands. Explore the wonder of changing seasons along 145 miles of trails. Get outside and discover the good things that happen when you visit DuPage Forest Preserves. The Forest Preserve District of DuPage County, where good things happen.
Hey, my name's Katie and I'm in the 9th grade. I'm an A average student and I'm an athlete working towards a scholarship. And everybody tells me how much potential I have. But I just wish someone would tell me where my next meal is coming from. Katie, how'd I do?
Do you have to be so serious?
Well, I mean, I did like a crazy dance in a movie if you want me to do a little, no.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Welcome back to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, and joining me at the table, image consultant Charmaine Smith. Charmaine, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're able to join us today. Charmaine, I want to start off by having you share a little bit about yourself. You started doing something different, and now you're an image consultant. I'll let you share.
Sure. So I started my career out as a registered nurse. So I started out in healthcare, moved on to healthcare administration. I was a director and manager within the corporate environment for more than 15 years. So that afforded me the opportunity to interview a lot of people. So I've seen a full gamut of what people wear through the interview environment. And then a couple of years ago, in fact, when I first came to the Community Career Center it gave me the little nudge to move forward in something that I've always been interested in, which was in wardrobe styling. So I do the workshops there, a couple, Dress for Your Success and Dress Your Shape. And like I mentioned, nudged me in the direction that I really needed to be going anyway, which was with fashion.
I know oftentimes at the center we have our clients will talk to us about, you know, how should I dress for an interview? I think work attire is a little more casual than it has been in years past. So I want to touch on that a little bit with you. So let's just start off with that. How do you portray an image of professionalism in a job search?
Sure. Well, so when you are going for a job interview, it's really important to not only dress for the position that you're applying for, you want to dress for a level or two above that. And what that typically means is wearing a suit. I recommend for everyone, regardless of the position that you are applying for, that you wear a suit. You do not have to spend a ton of money in order to look professional and look good. So there is really a package, if you will, that you need to present when you are in front of anyone. That's wearing a suit that is of the matching cloth, meaning the jacket, the trousers, the skirt, those are all the same cloth. You can reflect a little bit of your personality with color, with either your blouse, your button-down shirt, a tie, you know, those kinds of things, a statement necklace for women.
Okay.
But it,
Really
it needs
tone
to
down
be
the jewelry, not a whole lot.
Minimal jewelry, you don't wear a hat, you know, those kinds of things. Heels for women are important, whether it's a kitten heel or a medium to moderate heel, but you don't want to wear stilettos to a job interview, obviously. But with that package, you know, there are several things that you need to present when you are in front of someone with an interview. So you're not wanting to be distracting. You don't want to have any article on you, so a lot of dangling bracelets or chandelier earrings are really a big no for that because it is distracting. But you do want to make sure that you're smiling and that it's a genuine smile, and you want to make sure that you have your legal pad and a pen. You want to have, you know, your attaché or a briefcase, and all of these combine together to provide this very professional image. And image is very important in an interview.
What is the biggest mistake that people make as it relates to dressing for?
In general? In general, I would say fit.
Okay.
Regardless of whether you spend $5, $50, $5,000 on a suit, it needs to fit. You could wear a name brand suit that is too large or too small. It looks very cheap, and you know you can have a very inexpensive suit, and if it fits, if it's tailored perfectly for you, you're going to look like $1 million bucks, easy.
So, what are some of the typically? I mean, I know I've heard you should have certain things in your wardrobe, so you don't really have to go spend a whole lot of money. No. So is it a pair of black slacks, a black skirt, a blue skirt? What are some of the things that...
Sure. Yeah, so you need a core set of clothing, and that core really needs to be more of the neutral tone. So we're looking at things like charcoal and gray, navy. Black is an option as well, but we have to be careful with black. We can start to look like, you know, undertakers and that, and we want to avoid that. So if you wear black, you want to wear color with it. You know, wear yellow or cranberry or something that's very complementary for your skin tone. Yeah, but when you're purchasing those core items, you want to be able to mix and match those later. This is how you expand and extend a wardrobe on a budget. So if you start out with something that, say, is charcoal, the jacket and the trousers, and you get the job after this great interview where you've presented very professionally, then you want to have something like navy, because now you can mix and match those pieces, and so now you've gone from 2 outfits to multiple outfits. So.
Another thing I know that we touch on at the center is you have people that are at different, you know, ages. We just spoke a little bit about the seasoned worker, and then we also have, you know, the recent college graduate. It's important to dress for your age.
Yes.
As you're going through this process. And I think when you talk about ill-fitting, you want to make sure you're not wearing things that are too tight, too short.
That's absolutely right. So when we talk about age appropriateness for the workplace, It's less about the age as much as it is the fit. Because when you're going for a job interview, you're not going to be wearing the young, trendy things that you would be wearing out on a date if you were going out on a Saturday night. So when you think about, again, a core wardrobe, you're really looking at classic suits. So unless you know that you're going to interview somewhere that is fashion forward, meaning very much in the current trends as opposed to a specific, general style, then you really want to stick with classics.
Let's talk a little bit about first impressions and how important that is. Not only dress, but in other areas.
Sure. Well, so as we know, it's 30 seconds or less. We make our first impression. And quite honestly, it's an extremely visual process. Once we see someone, before we hear them talk, before anything else happens, we make this judgment. And all of that has to do with how they're dressed, the way they carry themselves, their bearing. So all of that ties into, the first impression that's made. That sets the tone for the interview. In fact, it sets the tone for the workplace, for all of the interactions that you have with other people. And that carries on into your personal life as well. So the first impression that you make with someone, it's really hard to undo that. So if it's a great first impression, you might make a mistake, right? During the interview, say something you didn't quite mean, but it might be forgiven a little more easily just because you looked pulled together.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I've heard some job seekers say that they've walked into an interview, they expected it to last, an hour, and 15 minutes later it's over.
Sure.
So something clearly happened in that process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to really be careful there. Let's talk a little bit about the business casual versus the workplace attire versus, give me some thoughts on,
Sure. So business casual means something a little different depending on the culture. And so a couple of examples of that is that the standard for business culture usually means that you are going to wear perhaps khakis or slacks, and you'll wear a shirt but not the suit. You may or may not wear a tie. So it doesn't mean that you're wearing jeans, and it doesn't mean that you're wearing t-shirts. It just means that you're not wearing a full suit. And that's business casual. Now, for some of the younger areas, when you're talking about IT and areas like that, they tend to be far more casual. And business casual to them sometimes does mean a nice pair of jeans with a button-down shirt, and that's business casual. So you really have to know the company, either their HR policy, or you have to ask someone.
Yeah, it's important to really ask the question.
Absolutely.
And know how to move forward with that. We talked a little bit about accessories, and I just want to kind of zero in on that again, because you see, the dangling earrings, lots of necklaces is kind of a style thing, but not necessarily at work, would you say?
Well, I would say not for an interview.
Not for an interview.
For the workplace, again, it depends on the culture of that particular company, right? So for an interview, I tell people minimal is the best. For an interview, you're looking at 2 earrings maximum. You're looking at stud or very simple hoop earrings. You're looking at a statement necklace or a tie for a gentleman, a good silk tie. But you don't, even if your style is to wear many layers of jewelry in that, it's not appropriate for an interview.
But it could be appropriate for the everyday workplace.
It could. It depends on the company. It depends on what your role is and what you do. If you're someone that's typing all day and you have many people that work around you, wearing tons of metal, bracelets may not be the best option. So. Right.
We haven't touched on makeup.
Okay.
Let's touch a little bit on that.
Absolutely. So that's part of the package, right, that we talked about. Obviously, most men don't wear makeup. Some do. But for women, one of the things that you want to make sure about is that it's natural. You want the makeup to be natural. You don't want it to be dark. You don't want it to be garish. Natural earth tones, that is the best way to go. Absolutely.
Now, when folks are in a job search, their finances are, a little limited. And so you want to make sure that you keep your clothing, you still have clothes to, stay relevant. How do you maintain a wardrobe on a very minimal budget?
Sure. No, that's an excellent question. So when we kind of go back to what we should have in our wardrobe, and we talk about that core wardrobe, if you have classics, those tend to be pretty timeless. So exactly. And so, if you bought one now and you need it again 5 years from now, that should still work for you. What may change are some of the accessories, right? Or maybe even the color of the shirt that you're wearing or the width or size of the tie. Those things do vary over time, and those can be very inexpensive to replace. But if you are starting out, you have to start your wardrobe from scratch. You can find excellent deals at discount stores, great sales, outlet malls. Those are really great places to start.
I want to touch on a couple more things that may be a little sensitive, but facial hair?
Yes, needs to be neatly trimmed, just like the hair on your head. Everything should be nice and neat, put together, polished.
Okay. Fingernail polish?
It needs to be natural. So it kind of goes along with the makeup, right? Everything needs to be very natural and right. You don't want distraction is really the thing, which is why, you know, we talk about the jewelry and being more minimal. The same thing goes for the fingernails. If you're all polished and put together and everything is neat and you have these bright red fingernails, it's distracting to the interviewer.
Or polish that's chipped or...
Yeah, that looks tacky, right? Because when we're talking about this package that we're putting together and presenting ourselves, we want to show that we pay attention to detail, that we're tidy and that we are organized, and that's how we do it.
Shoes?
Shoes, wear them.
Yes, wear them, of course. But I mean, I've noted I've had to throw out shoes. If your heels are messed up, you really want to make sure everything is put together.
Absolutely. Shoes are important. And I tell folks that shoes make or break an outfit. And I mean, it sounds cliche, I'm sure, but it is incredibly important. Again, you do not have to spend a ton of money for them to look good. But if you have a pair of shoes that you really like or that are really comfortable, they're perfect with this suit that you bought, there are, you know, folks that can fix some of those things. It's amazing what can be done to replace a sole. It looks and feels like a new shoe. Keep them polished. I mean, sometimes you need just a good polish. You could have it professionally done for a few bucks and you're good to go. Yeah.
And one thing I'm starting to face myself right now is that salt and pepper hair. I'm starting to get it. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do about that? So what are your thoughts? Should people dye their hair?
Well, that's really more a personal choice, right? So if we want to remain more natural and true to ourselves, we all get older. I mean, you know, that's inevitable, right? So gray hair, not a bad thing. However, if for that specific individual it's something that bothers them or if they feel that it hinders them in any way, coloring your hair is perfectly fine. A lot of people do it, and you would be surprised that many people that I've known in the workplace, even as early as their early 20s, are dyeing their hair. So it's not really
keep it
questioned. Absolutely.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I want to thank Charmaine Smith and Sally Hines for being a part of this month's edition of Career Center. And remember, if you're unemployed, underemployed, or seeking a career change, visit the Community Career Center on Wednesday or Saturday mornings at 9:00 a.m. to learn more about the resources available to you. Thanks so much for watching.